Good evening. So, whenever I tell people that I'm studying economics, the most popular response that I get from them is, oh, you're studying about money, you're studying about making profits, you're studying about the nation's economy. Well, that's not what economics is. Economics is a science that seeks to decrypt the code of nature, understand human behavior. I'm not here to make a case for my discipline. I'm not here to apologize on behalf of it. I'm not here to give you some relationship advice. I'm just going to tell you how incorporation of mathematics into emotions and understanding emotions using mathematical and economic ideas is actually beneficial not only for the discipline, as economics is, but also for humans in their decision-making processes. So this is a quote by Charles Dickens, Hard Times. You see a difference when in your minds when you read the words in bold and when you read the words which are underlined. That's the difference between empiricism and feelings. That's the difference between numbers and emotions. That's the difference between how you react to something very mechanical, cold, calculative, and how you react to something which is very much emotional, nice, pristine. So we are here to break this disassociation between what Dickens calls as fact and fancy. We are here to unite, say, the fact of the mind with the fancy of the heart, and realize that human beings, while making decisions, act not just in a very conventional, narrowed economic manner, but they act in both emotional and rational ways. So it's a mix and match of both fact and fancy, both numbers and emotions. Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, who started this entire idea of economic agents being self-interest oriented, said that individual ambitions lead to common good. He said, so says all of you are the world here, 100 people, 60 people. Let's say all of you think about yourself. That will lead to the benefit of society, everyone here at a whole level. So Adam Smith says that rationality, economic rationality for Homo economicus would be thinking about my selfish interests. In economics, you call it monotonicity. I want more of a good all the time. I want more to consume. I want more profits. I want more revenues just for myself. So those of you who've read Ayn Rand perhaps would agree with this and say that, yeah, individualism is the best way to deal with society and altruism is actually an evil. But that's not what humans are. So you don't have a mother telling a son, I love 50% of your genetic payload. She says, I love you. So that's what it is. So Homo economicus is this and human behavior is this. So it's actually a very, very small part of human behavior that economics tries to understand. A variety of capitalist businesses in Japan function on something called Japanese ethos. They are making huge profits and they are functioning on emotions such as trust, emotions such as honesty, emotions such as loyalty. These three could be a subset of a mega emotion called love. That's what it is, because not only relationship-oriented romantic love, but platonic love as well. So trust, loyalty, honesty, and they're making huge profits. They're not just thinking typically like an economic agent that I want to maximize my profits and not keep anyone in the market into consideration. It has also been shown, and very much neglected researches, which we generally don't see in mainstream media, they've shown that brain levels, oxytocin levels in your brain are actually linked with economic growth. Oxytocin is an enzyme which responds to trust. So they figured out that in many countries where trust levels are high, economic growth is high. Immanuel Kant, a very famous philosopher, came up with something called categorical imperative. He says to act rational is to treat everybody as ends in themselves and not just means to your ends. So Kant would probably be very, very wrong in saying this. One popular criticism about him is, so if there is an apple pie kept in front of me, I should react in such a way, in a way I would want the other person to react. So no one will end up eating the apple pie at all. But if you apply Kant's idea to microeconomics, economics that deals with the individual, you realize that a lot of microeconomic equilibrium positions just treat the market and people in the market and firms in the market and consumers in the market as means to your ends. So say everyone sitting in the first row right now are n number of firms. They have two options, either to just think for themselves and get maximum profit, or to think about each other and work for the market as a whole, to cooperate or to not cooperate. We are going to use an economics construct to literally break the myth economics survives on, mainstream economics survives on. We are going to use a game theory concept called prisoner's dilemma. Let's say there are two prisoners in this room. I know they've committed a crime. One is in that corner and one is in that corner. I want them to confess. So I say, if both of you end up confessing, you both will get 6 years in jail. If you confess and you don't, you're the good guy, so you get 0 years in jail, and you get 10 years in jail. If you confess and you don't, you're the good guy, you get 0 and he gets 10. And if both of you do not confess, both of you get 2 years in jail. Now, if the prisoners are thinking about themselves, they would say, and they're not allowed to interact. So they would say, what is it I should do given the reaction of the other prisoner? So if I do not confess and the other one confesses, he gets 0 and I get 10. So the other one thinks the same way, and both of them, in jargon words, they would come to a dominant strategy equilibria at confess, confess. That's 6, 6. Both of them will end up confessing. So we saw selfishness is not always the right way to behave. Individual self-interest, in this case, unlike what Adam Smith said, did not lead to the common good. So let's twist the tail a bit. Economics gives us one extreme called self-interest. I'll give you another extreme called altruism. Let's think of these prisoners in love, or let's make it lighter. Let's say they have altruistic tendencies towards each other. Okay, so prisoner A needs to decide whether to confess or not confess. So he thinks of what B would do. So if B confesses, what is it that I should do to make B better? Because I have altruistic tendencies towards B. So if B confesses, that's the first column there, I should not confess, because that way B gets 0 years in jail. If B does not confess, again, the second column there, I should not confess, because as opposed to 10 years, B gets 2 years in jail. So I love B, I want to think pro B all the time, so I will not confess. Now we are assuming B is also very altruistic. B will think alike, B will also not end up confessing. Both of them will come to a dominant strategy Nash equilibria at 2, 2, that is not confess. So altruism can lead to the common good. Altruism can actually make individuals better off. The economic man is a very, very 17th century kind of a textbook analysis man who just makes sure that he wants to function in a very, very scientific way, yet in real life that application is not very, very useful, because you're losing out a lot if you behave selfishly. The prisoner's dilemma, like here you would say prisoners should actually be jailed, so 6 years is better. So how is that social efficiency? But this could actually be applied to a husband and his wife thinking about to divorce or not to divorce. That's actually useful, because the husband would think for the wife would think for the husband. Or just like I said, people sitting here in the first row of firms, whether to incur advertising costs or not. So if we all incur advertising costs, most of us might be at a loss, because consumers then get divided amongst each of us. So let's think about each other and let's not incur them, whatever. So any kind of scenario based on firms, husband and wives, or prisoners, it just teaches us that economics gives us a very, very skewed idea of what the reality is. So yeah, so human beings, I give you the other extreme. Human beings play a mixed strategy in game theoretic terms in life. They are neither self-interest oriented nor extremely altruistic. So it's there somewhere in the middle. So then you could probably assort probabilities to the payoffs, and that could have another equilibria. Now we are going to twist the entire argument and use mathematical and economic constructs and plug them into love. For all the poets and extremely emotional people among you who might be very uncomfortable with me using numbers and quantifying your feelings, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give numbers to your emotions and ask you to do that thing at home. This is just to understand how our brain inadvertently works in a mathematical way. You may break up with your girlfriend or start dating, that's an emotional reaction, but numbers are what led to that reaction, is what we are arguing. The basic argument behind this is to realize that the anti-math stereotype that we have in our heads, that numbers are bad, emotions are good, or if you're being extremely emotional, start being rational. No, you're being both at the same time. You're human beings, you're not rational fools or say animals who just think in a particular way. Love is not going to have utility here. Those of you who've done a course in utility would, in economics, you would know what utility is. Utility is just the returns that I get from something. Love is not having utility here. Another economics concept, intrinsic value. Love is what has intrinsic value. We value love for what it is. So unlike bananas and apples and oranges that you consume, say 5 right now, 10 after that, 15 after that, you keep on giving me more and more, I'll just get irritated with it and happiness would fall. Love does not follow that diminishing marginal utility idea. Love can give you same amount of happiness or more happiness, depends. Now, I'm going to use a tool called regression, time series regression. and understand relationship stability. So let's say there are two people here. Both of them come to me and say, after a month of my relationship, my girlfriend and I spent on an average 8 hours with each other. 3 months later, 6 hours. 5 months later, 5 hours. 7 months later, 5 hours again. And the other guy says, no, more or less we spent 5 hours throughout. So if you do a regression analysis here, you see one person's love is more and more dependent on time. That is very simple to do on Excel. You don't need to actually do it at home. You might just get into trouble and might just do some damage to your relationship. But it's very simple to do on Excel, and you get to realize whether your love is dependent on time and whether it's a negative relationship. Now, I've chosen time as a proxy for myself. Say I'm not in a long distance relationship, time really matters to me. You could take commodity benefits or commodity losses as your proxy for love. Any proxy would do. The reason behind saying all this is to understand how your brain works. Your brain doesn't need data analysis tool pack of Microsoft Excel to realize all this. You don't need to draw graphs at home to realize all this. It just inadvertently happens and you function that way. Now, some terms here, again, they might scare you. I'm not going to use them just to attack emotions. Benefits, costs, and returns. For me, benefits of love, say, are the time she spends with me, the commodity benefits I get, usually the other way around, especially in a patriarchal setup, and the personalistic benefits that I get, say happiness or satisfaction. So my benefits curve initially rises with time and then falls, or it may never fall. This is just a generalized scenario. It may be anything for anyone sitting here. Costs for me would be the time I spend with her, the commodity benefits I give her, and personalistic changes that I have to make. Say she likes watching Hollywood movies. I don't understand words and English like the way she does. So I want to watch a Bollywood movie, but I have to give it up because I have to watch it for her. So that's a personalistic loss. That's a cost of love. So again, no calculations involved. Returns of love would be benefits minus costs minus opportunity costs. I'm dating you. That's why I can't date anyone else. I'm just using romantic relationships as a prototype here. It is very much applicable for platonic relationships also. So as benefits reach a maximum, costs start increasing. When benefits are maximum, in this generalized scenario, costs are 0. Returns is benefits minus costs. You reach that optimal blue point there. At that point, your brain needs to decide whether to let go of the relationship, whether those two different curves in different directions, you can see them in the second graph, or whether to work on your relationship and make it better. In mathematical terms, your emotional brain is literally deciding whether to choose an absolute maxima or an inflection point. So that's, and your brain doesn't tell you this. You don't need to know calculus for this. It just automatically happens. So demeaning numbers and empiricism is just not right because you behave that way. So do not condemn the stereotypical economic rational man because you sometimes in very small ways behave like that. My last idea today would be something which is very much useful at a societal level. Before that, the idea of the Edgeworth box. I would tell you a bit about indifference curves, the first thing that you learn as an economics student. Let's say again my proxy for love is time spent. No calculation involved. Don't try calculating this at home or drawing this also. That's very taxing. So let's say I believe in Plato. Plato says that my soul is made up of two parts. One is reason-based, one is emotion-based. Though I don't agree with Plato because we've just been arguing that emotions are also reason-based and reason is also emotional in nature. But let's say for time being we agree with him. So I divide my day according to that. I say 5 hours I'll spend with myself, doing my work, my job, my salary, my ambitions. 5 hours I'll spend with her, watching a movie, eating food, whatever. Or I say 4 hours with myself, 6 hours with her. Between these 2 hours combinations, I'm indifferent. I'm equally happy in both the situations. But then, no, she says spend 7 hours with me and 3 hours working. Now that makes me less happy. Or it may make me more happy, depends on your nature. So that just determines where your indifference curves are. If 2 combinations make you equally happy, you're on the same curve. They make you more happy, you're on a higher curve. They make you less happy, you're on a lesser curve. Lesser, like close to the origin. It's not just you now, it's her also. So person A is on this XY axis combination. Person B is on that XY combination. You want to go above towards the right. She wants to maximize her happiness coming towards the left. In economic terms, the optimal point, that blue point there, is Pareto optimality. It says no one can be made better off at this point without making anyone worse off. So suppose that point is 5, 5 hours with myself, 5 hours with her. If I increase that to 6 or decrease that to 4, one of us is going to get upset. So that's the potential of your relationship basically. If you lie somewhere else on the Edgeworth box, that just means you can still work on the relationship and come to that point. Why am I saying this to you? Not because drawing this would help, but because you need to understand that our brain has a lot of Edgeworth box kind of ideas fitted there. Whatever trade-offs you face in life, whatever emotional trade-offs you face in life, your brain has the Edgeworth box sets ready to react. So it's literally using a numerical, calculative, mechanical, that's what the idea I started with, idea, and putting it into an emotional context and realizing how we speak emotions, we talk emotions, we behave in an emotional way, but our brain does function, keeping the rules of calculus, keeping the rules of, say, graphs and stuff like that into mind. This idea is not just useful for individual relationships. Let's think about a government-citizen relationship. I'm exaggerating it because that's not love. You would say that's clearly not love. But that's just an exaggerated version of altruism called welfare. So a government loves its citizens. Citizens love the government. Government self-love, not the time here, would be taxes. I want to manage my deficits. I'm the government. I want taxes. Love for citizens would be subsidies. I want to give you subsidies. Now the government needs to decide what would be the optimal allocation. So the government would say, we can carry out surveys and literally plot those indifference curves and find out the optimal point. So you used an emotional construct to literally make the job of the government easier. You used a feelings-based idea to make numerical analysis for the government better. So you see, the mind and the heart do not separate in a very different way. The mind and the heart, math, economics, and emotions, numbers and feelings, everything is just gelled together because we are humans. We are not the conventional stereotypical economic man who just thinks about profits, my selfishness, selfish motives. We are not the often blamed emotional people who just think emotionally and in conventional terms irrationally. We are a mix and match of both. So let's break the stereotype. Let's take back one message today that by incorporating emotions into humans and math into our emotional parts, we're actually understanding ourselves better and becoming better humans than before. Thank you.